Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 117. Chapter 117. Natasha had not had a moment free since early morning, and had not once had time to think of what lay before her. In the damp, chill air and crowded closeness of the swaying carriage, she for the first time vividly imagined what was in store for her there at the ball, in those brightly lighted rooms, with music, flowers, dances, the emperor, and all the brilliant young people of Petersburg. The prospect was so splendid that she hardly believed it would come true. So out of keeping was it with the chill darkness and closeness of the carriage. She understood all that awaited her only when, after stepping over the red baize at the entrance, she entered the hall, took off her fur cloak, and beside Sonia and in front of her mother, mounted the brightly illuminated stairs between the flowers. Only then did she remember how she must behave at a ball, and tried to assume the majestic air she considered indispensable for a girl on such an occasion. But, fortunately for her, she felt her eyes growing misty. She saw nothing clearly, her pulse beat 100 to the minute, and the blood throbbed at her heart. She could not assume that pose, which would have made her ridiculous, and she moved on almost fainting from excitement and trying with all her might to conceal it. But this was the very attitude that became her best. Before and behind them, other visitors were entering, also talking in low tones and wearing ball dresses. The mirrors on the landing reflected ladies in white, pale blue, and pink dresses, with diamonds and pearls on their bare necks and arms. Natasha looked in the mirrors and could not distinguish her reflection from the others. All was blended into one brilliant procession. On entering the ballroom, the regular hum of voices, footsteps, and greetings deafened Natasha, and the light and glitter dazzled her still more. The host and hostess, who had already been standing at the door for half an hour, repeating the same words to the various arrivals, greeted the Rostovs in Peronskaya in the same manner. The two girls in their white dresses, each with a rose in her black hair, both curtsied in the same way, but the hostess's eye involuntarily rested longer on the slim Natasha. She looked at her, and gave her alone a special smile, in addition to her usual smile as hostess. Looking at her, she may have recalled the golden, irrecoverable days of her own girlhood and her own first ball. The host also followed Natasha with his eyes, and asked the count which was his daughter. "Charming," said he, kissing the tips of his fingers. In the ballroom, guests stood crowding at the entrance doors, awaiting the emperor. The countess took up a position in one of the front rows of that crowd. Natasha heard and felt that several people were asking about her and looking at her. She realized that those noticing her liked her, and this observation helped to calm her. There are some like ourselves and some worse, she thought. Peronskaya was pointing out to the countess the most important people at the ball. "That is the Dutch ambassador, do you see? That gray-haired man," she said, indicating an old man with a profusion of silver-gray curly hair, who was surrounded by ladies laughing at something he said. "Ah, here she is, the Queen of Petersburg, Countess Bezukhova," said Peronskaya, indicating Helene, who had just entered. "How lovely! She is quite equal to Maria Antonovna. See how the men, young and old, pay court to her. Beautiful and clever. They say Prince is quite mad about her. But see, those two, though not good-looking, are even more run after." She pointed to a lady who was crossing the room, followed by a very plain daughter. "She is a splendid match, a millionairess," said Peronskaya. "And look, here come her suitors." "That is Bezukova's brother, Anatoly Kuragin," she said, indicating a handsome officer of the Horse Guards who passed by them with head erect, looking at something over the heads of the ladies. "He's handsome, isn't he? I hear they will marry him to that rich girl. But your cousin, Drubetskoy, is also very attentive to her. They say she has millions." "Oh, yes, that's the French ambassador himself," she replied to the Countess's inquiry about Caulaincourt. "Looks as if he were a king. All the same, the French are charming, very charming. No one is more charming in society. Ah, here she is. Yes, she is still the most beautiful of them all, our Maria Antonovna. And how simply she is dressed. Lovely. And that stout one in spectacles is the universal Freemason," she went on, indicating Pierre. "Put him beside his wife, and he looks a regular buffoon." Pierre, swaying his stout body, advanced, making way through the crowd, and nodding to right and left as casually and good-naturedly as if he were passing through a crowd at a fair. He pushed through, evidently looking for someone. Natasha looked joyfully at the familiar face of Pierre the buffoon, as Peronskaya had called him, and knew he was looking for them, and for her in particular. He had promised to be at the ball and introduce partners to her. But before he reached them, Pierre stopped beside a very handsome, dark man of middle height and in a white uniform, who stood by a window, talking to a tall man wearing stars and ribbons. Natasha at once recognized the shorter and younger man in the white uniform. It was Bolkonsky, who seemed to her to have grown much younger, happier, and better looking. "There's someone else we know, Bolkonsky. Do you see, Mamma?" said Natasha, pointing out Prince Andrew. "You remember, he stayed the night with us at Otradno." "Oh, you know him," said Peronskaya. "I can't bear him. He's too proud for anything, takes after his father. And he's hand in glove with Speransky, writing some project or other. Just look how he treats the ladies. There's one talking to him, and he has turned away," she said, pointing at him. "I'd give it to him if he treated me as he does those ladies." All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 117. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 117. The Sweet Nectar. If society is the hive where the honey is made, then the sweet nectar of personal satisfaction is a byproduct of our social interaction with each other. Friendship, religious communion, political affiliation, civic institutions, 19th century aristocratic Russian balls. These are the things that not only bring us together, but also provide us with a sustained sense of happiness. Just look at Natasha in today's chapter. She's at her first ball, and she's overwhelmed with joyful emotion. She can barely stand up at one point. The ball is also a learning opportunity for her. She spends most of the chapter, after she gets control of herself, talking with Maria Ignatievna Perovskaya. Here Natasha learns about all the people in Russian society. We can also assume that by paying attention to how others behave at a social setting, she too learns how to comport herself. During her cataloging of the guests, Peronskaya points out Helene and her brother Anatoly. But Natasha is much more interested in Pierre, who she spots across the room. He's talking to a pair of young men. One of the young men turns out to be Prince Andrew. He appears, to Natasha at least, much more younger, happier, and better looking than he did when they first met weeks ago at Otradno. Peronskaya dismisses him as an arrogant and proud man. We get the feeling, however, that Natasha doesn't agree and wants to get to know more about him. The chapter ends here. We'll have to wait to see if Natasha can somehow manage a proper introduction to Prince Andrew. For now, however, she'll have to remain content just to be in society rather than to be in love. Daily Meditation. And again, consider that for whatever purpose each thing has been constituted, for this it has been constituted, and towards that it is being carried. And its end is in that towards which it is carried. And where the end is, there also is the advantage and the good of each thing. Now the good for the reasonable animal is society. For that we are made for society is shown. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. All right, that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 117. I hope you liked it. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. The links to all that are below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 118. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.